Hey everyone, this is Raleigh Blue Tech, and in this video I'll be going over the Cisco certification pathways. Now there's a whole lot to the Cisco certification pathways, that's why I'll only be going over a brief introduction to it. In this video we'll cover how long it takes for a certificate to get, what's the time frame before you have to renew your certificate, and also the possible salaries and the educational expertise that you'll get with every single certificate. So in the Cisco certification pathways, there are different specialties you could get involved with. The first one on our list is architect. So if you've heard of CCIE, you know how valued that certificate is and how much of a tier hierarchy it plays amongst the rest of the certificates, which I'll be going over in the next slide. But architect is the highest specialty you can get. It combines both technical understanding of a variation of Cisco's technologies, and it also involves business skills. So you understand how to talk about the cost effectiveness of these different technology components. The next one on our list is routing and switching. Routing and switching is the core. It's the fundamentals of how traffic flows. Every environment has a router, every environment has a switch, whether it's combined into one device or not depends on the environment that you're in, but those are the basics that are in every organization. Cloud, it's data storage that you can access. I won't go into detail with all these specialties, but I'll give a brief idea of them, like cloud. Collaboration is next. Collaboration is telepresence devices and voice over IP. So if you've seen phones, or if you've seen an interview with Snowden on TV with him looking like a robot and talking to a crowd on a tablet looking like thing, those are telepresence devices. Those are devices that allow you to feel like someone's presence is nearby even if they're far away. Cybersecurity operations is next, and that's the newest certificate that Cisco had to offer. It allows entry-level techies a good understanding of how to work in a security operations center. It's still, I've looked into this certificate a little bit. It seems to really cover the general idea of operations from a cybersecurity perspective. It doesn't go into too much detail with Cisco's devices, but it is listed in there. In data center, there's a huge market for that. I know in Raleigh specifically, I've been reached out to twice, and that wasn't even on my resume. They just wanted to see if I had any kind of experience. They wanted to cross their T's and dot their I's. So data center, it's basically a conglomeration of data being transferred to a very large environment and allowing that data to be shared with the resources that environment has. It mixes very closely with cloud and routing and switching. So a lot of times when people have routing and switching, they'll switch over to data center pretty easily. Design is the next one. Design is also business oriented. It doesn't get as technical as all these other certificates, but it allows people to understand what a network environment needs or what an environment needs from a business standpoint. Industrial IoT is a specialty that deals with the Internet of Things, which means that devices, large or small devices, should have an IP address, a way to communicate, a way to manage. Security is the next one, and it's my favorite because I'm in the security world. So security allows for companies, large, small, the governments, large, small, to be secure. So if you've heard of a DDoS attack, like the distributed denial of service, security that Cisco has implemented allows for these attacks to not be successful. So companies don't go down, or traffic doesn't go where it doesn't need to go. So that's why firewalls are built. So security goes into these different applications that, or different appliances that Cisco has to offer. Wireless is the last one on our list. Wireless shows the way you can connect without wire. I know that sounds pretty obvious, but that's basically it. It's access points, it's wireless LAN controllers, it's appliances. Yeah, so that's quite basic. It gets bigger and deeper as far as the idea of wireless, because you can go into ranges like 4G and towers and how they communicate, backups if your wired services go down. So that's basically the specialties that Cisco has to offer. It gets into greater detail once you start studying them. It's very it's very comprehensive when you look through these specialties. What I have here is a very simple oversight. The next slide, we have the progression pyramid. It starts with the CCENT. The CCENT is the base because that's where you're going to want to start. It basically gives you an understanding of how LAN works, how networking with routing works, and different kinds of infrastructure. If you've heard of the IPv4 or IPv6 protocols, it goes over that too. The reason why I have associate's degree here listed also under the CCENT is because within every category of the certification pyramid, they have been equivocated to a certain degree because of the salary that you may get. The salary that you may get really depends on geographic region that you're at. So if you're in the middle of nowhere, it might not be useful. But in places like Raleigh, with a population of like 400 to 500,000 people, hey, that's good enough for you to be worth your salt if you have a CCENT or one of these certifications. I know as of 2017, these certifications still hold value and people do hire. The CCNA is the next certificate up from the CCENT. So you have to renew every 3 years your certificate or go to the next level up in order to renew your previous certificate in Cisco. So let's say you have a CCENT and it's been 3 years. The CCNA is where you would want to go to next. The default path for the CCNA is the routing and switching. This layer of the pyramid makes you begin to specialize. So that means you can do routing, switching, security, collaboration at this point. But a lot of times you should at least have a routing and switching as a CCNA, and then you can start branching off into like security or collaboration and design, the list that we had earlier. The CCNP gets a little more complicated, and like before, the CCNP, if you get that, it allows you to renew your previous certifications. The CCNP is the professional level, the Cisco Certified Network Professional, and it gets you comfortable with the technologies that you have worked in the past and the technologies that you are working in with the certificate or the specialty you've decided to go for. The CCNP might have 3 certifications that you have to get in order to get the CCNP level. It all depends on the specialties. Sometimes you have to get 5 different certifications to get the CCNP. So it all depends on your certification pathway that you're going for. And this is considered a master's degree equivalent. And the next up is the CCIE. Now, the CCIE, the Cisco Certified Interoperability Expert, also renews your previous certificate, but I should have mentioned this earlier. The previous certificates, you would have to have the certificate before it as a prerequisite to take it. The CCIE is not the case. So the CCIE, you can go directly into the CCIE and test out of that if you wanted to. However, it's probably a good idea to have the CCENT, CCNA, and the CCNP first. Unless you have like years and years of experience, it's going to be really difficult to get the CCIE because the tests are very long. There's only 2 places you can go for to test out for it. That's in San Francisco and in Raleigh. And it's a great idea to make sure that you know that the material that you have studied for, the pathway that you have studied for before you take it. It takes hours to finish the test. It's composed of the lab and what's called a written test. It just takes a long time to do, and it's advised that you have the previous certifications before you take it, even though it's not a prerequisite. And this CCIE certification is equivalent to a PhD degree. It'll take you probably as long as it would take you to get a PhD degree to achieve a CCIE. So it's hard work to get every one of these certificates. It's not like a week of studying and all of a sudden you're certified and you understand your technology. Lastly, we have the Cisco Certified Architect. As I've said earlier, this is one of its kind. It's a mix of a PhD and an MBA equivalent. So you have technical experience, years of it, if you have a CCAR certificate. And you also have a good idea of how business works. So that's why I have here on this list as a PhD and MBA equivalent. Job insights. In this slide, I'll be talking about the availabilities that you have if you have a Cisco certificate and the income that you might get. The reason why I brought this slide in is because a lot of times we can consider degrees or we can consider certificates as our next step, but the certificates usually provide a more immediate return of investments than a degree. And for the moment, I don't see this it's 2017. I don't see the Cisco certifications losing its value in the next several years. It's been around for a while, and I imagine it's going to be around for a long time. So here's some job insights that I've thought of the past few years. Just because there's job posts out there for a network engineer position at a specific company, that doesn't mean that specific company has that job available. Maybe they want you to apply to that job to keep their statistics and their idea of the market open. Maybe they want you to apply for that job to keep you available just in case the person that's in that role moves on to greater opportunities, which is very much the case in some contracts that I know of. As far as salaries go, you can basically Google that. So if you find a certain job and Google what the salary is for that job at that company, I would say that's more or less accurate. It's a good idea of where you're going to be. So 6 figures after 5 years is a really good marker of Cisco, like that you're doing well in a Cisco certification pathway. If you're not making 6 figures in 5 years, I've always told my friends that you're probably doing something wrong in the tech world. It's not uncommon, is what I'm trying to say. If you play your cards right, if you work your way from CCNP to a CCNP even, you don't have to go through the IE or the architect. You can definitely pull in 6 figures. Now the IE and architect puts you in the higher end of the 6 figures. You can just Google that up. Well, for me, it's higher end. There's no way I make anywhere near the higher end of this this spectrum. But hey, I'm striving for it. I'm making my slow strides towards the IE and the architect. It's gonna take me a while, but one of these days. People skills are important, not just to move up, but to also enjoy the journey. And that puts me into the next transition. The next slide. I think in job insight, it is important that you keep in mind like that an ongoing network to communicate with other people and also to enjoy their company. Because if you're going to be there for a while, it's important to like where you work at. So yeah, so this next slide is the highlight of that, enjoying the process. It's good to enjoy the process when it comes to the work environment that you're in, but it's also good to enjoy the process as you study for these certifications. For me, I found that the process becomes enjoyable when I start labbing. Labbing is when all these topics that I'm reading become alive. It's great. I have just so much fun whenever I'm labbing. It's really good to get your hands onto a virtual environment. If you can afford it, a hardware environment, like hardware you can touch, it's more practical as far as like real life applications. But it is expensive. I have opted for software in the past, but I've also had some experience with hardware. But hardware is usually where people go to. Now there's just a lot of like software like GNS3 Viral that's coming out that gives you really, really good simulation of like what the actual physical hardware is going to be like when you connect it and configure it. But yeah, so enjoy the process by labbing. Labbing is where you learn to really care about what you're doing. It makes you feel really accomplished to be able to configure, let's say, a firewall or a router in a way that you know it's going to be secure, you know it's going to forward traffic, and you understand this mysteriousness of the internet a lot more, and you're able to like demystify this space that most people only talk from a marketing standpoint about. And also, I think as you enjoy the process, it's important that you remember why you started. So I would advise everyone listening to this video is to just take a piece of paper and just write the reasons why you start the certification process. Maybe it's because of better opportunities for yourself, and maybe if you have a family, better opportunities for your children's future to leave a legacy, things like that. This is a stepping stone. Like the Cisco certifications are not like the end all, but it's a good stepping stone to get to the next place. It's a good stepping stone to figure out what you want for yourself, for your family, for your life. So write your reasons down. The more reasons you have, the better. It gives you a reminder, hey, I'm enjoying the labs, but there are days that slow down and you're like, oh, why am I doing this? Go back to your reasons and you'll remember these are the reasons why. And it's important to breathe in and out during this process. Breathe in and breathe out. Remember, hey, it's a certification and it's going to take time. It's hard work, but it's worthwhile. So just enjoy the process while you're at it. Just breathe in, breathe out. And I wanted to leave this slide deck with saying nothing worth doing is really easy. And it's true in life, and it's true with the Cisco certification process. It's going to take time, but you'll start seeing those return of investments as you get these Cisco certifications, even from a CCENT level to a CCNA. Like your job growth will be seen as far as the kind of certifications you get and the kind of knowledge that you build. So yeah, that's basically my slideshow presentation for the introduction to Cisco certification pathways. Nothing worth doing is rarely easy. Thanks for listening.